Hands off to Jonathan Taylor. Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor made a man miss the line of scrimmage and then runs it into Pater. The one-handed INT. Are you kidding me? Kenny Moore.
What a play by Nyheim Hines. What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another Bring the Juice Colts podcast live stream. Hope you guys are enjoying your Thursdays. Thank you so much for coming in. Today, we have a very special guest. If you guys don't know who this man is, then I honestly have no idea what you're doing following Colts Nation. Kevin Bowen is here joining me today. Kevin, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great, Derek. Thanks for having me on, man. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty good, man. You know, just enjoying this beautiful weather that we're having. I mean, you know, the wind and the rain and the 50-degree weather, it feels like spring, doesn't it?
Gosh, balmy here. Yeah, I was going to say, luckily Carson Wentz is from North Dakota because I don't think his first impression, or I guess his first in-building impression at West 56 would have been too great with this weather.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, guys, thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully you guys can see everything good. Like I said in the description down here, if you guys have a question, be sure to ask it. We may be able to get to it here later on. Got a couple questions for Kevin, and we'll just keep going through. I mean, a lot happened today, and obviously you got to see it firsthand, the pressers that were today with owner Jim Irsay and the Colts' new quarterback, Carson Wentz. I mean, basically, first thing I'll ask you is, what's the biggest thing you took away from the Wentz presser?
Yeah, I would say the takeaway I had is just how much you can see him and Frank Reich align in so many ways. You know, when you hear the reports from Philadelphia about Carson Wentz last year and just him as a teammate, this is not like this is some malicious human being, you know, some just whatever, super negative, super angry guy. I just think he's pretty unique in an NFL locker room. And I think him and Frank Reich, and Carson mentioned this on several times today, that they first, you know, align from a moral standpoint. And then I think from a football mind, you know, both of them are probably in the 1 percentiles in their knowledge offensively and just in general from a football IQ standpoint. So that was probably my big takeaway from him. I thought he handled, you know, the constant questions pretty well. You know, he knew full well what he was walking into. And I thought he did a nice job there. Again, seems like a really nice guy and all of that. And ultimately, you know, it's just going to come down to actions. And he's going to have to prove himself, you know, obviously within the locker room, certainly on the field as well. And then when adversity inevitably hits, you're going to have to be able to, you know, fight through that and show that you are a leader for this team and that you're in the foxhole, if you will, through thick and thin.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when they were talking with Wentz this afternoon, I mean, the constant thing I kept hearing every other sentence was, you know, that he's excited for the new opportunity and especially to, you know, be able to do that with his old coach, Frank Reich. I mean, that makes total sense. I mean, you know, it seemed, I don't necessarily want to think it was forced. I don't know if that might have been the phrase that he was telling himself to constantly remind himself to say if he ever got into a tricky situation in there. Cause I heard that so many times, like, you know, I'm just not going to get into much detail about what happened in Philly. And it's just, I'm excited for the new opportunity. I mean, why do you think that was? I mean, honestly, he was very professional about it and wasn't stuttering at all. I mean, he seemed like he was at peace with it. But, you know, why do you think he felt like he had to keep saying that he didn't want to get into any info and he's just ready to take on this new step in life?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is probably a little PR coach speak. You know, there's no need to, I guess, rehash, you know, tons and tons of details from Philadelphia. And again, I think he knew these questions were going to continue to come up. And I do think he's legitimately excited. I mean, whether Carson Wentz wants to say it or not, I mean, he pretty much demanded a trade. You know, demand, I know, is a very aggressive word,
right?
But clearly he wanted out of Philadelphia and he wanted to be here in Indy. And I think he's very grateful and very humble by everything that transpired there. So I think that is what played into, his frequent comments about that today. But again, ultimately it's going to come down to actions, Derek. I mean, Wentz said it himself of, going out there to California, working with Michael Pittman, working with Desmond Patman. He talked about potentially, going across the country and doing a little bit more of that stuff. And obviously we'll see what happens, the rest of the wideout group wise, T.Y. Hilton being atop that list, and what the offseason is going to look like from an in-person spring session, OTA, all those things as well. So, again, he seemed, I thought he handled everything pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that a lot of concerns that everybody had with the teammate chemistry and being a bad teammate, I think that kind of brushed away pretty quickly, and especially over the number beef that they were having between him and Pittman. Him working out with Pittman already. I think a lot that kind of argument's already gone away. But just in your personal opinion, I mean, how effective do you think Carson Wentz can be being back in the system with Frank Reich, who he obviously knows, and Reich knows how to really get him to play the best of his abilities? How do you personally think he's going to do this season?
Yeah, I think he can get back to being that guy we saw 2018, 2019. Now, having said that, I think it's really important for the Colts to continue to support him. And I thought Marlon Mack and that re-signing was a good step in the right direction from a run game standpoint. As we sit here right now, who knows who the left tackle is going to be? You got to think it's not going to be an upgrade. I mean, that'd kind of be a slap in the face in Anthony Costanzo. So that is a question that you have. And then, wideout position, again, we'll see how that plays out. I still think there's a good chance TY returns. And then it's really just a lot of second-tier wideouts that are still out there. I don't see a Kenny Golladay or a Juju Smith-Schuster, and we just saw Will Fuller and Curtis Samuel come off the board. Two more kind of speedster guys, but and then tight end. That was a position that Jim Irsay mentioned today. Just kind of that dynamic playmaker, and where that tight end come from? It's not a great group left. I don't call Zach Ertz a dynamic tight end anymore. I think he's a fine player, but I don't think he's at that level either. So those will kind of be some interesting things. But again, I think fundamentally, if you can get Wentz back on track, that'll be huge. And I just think the respect and the trust he has in Frank Reich is big as well. But again, you got to get a little bit more at wideout or tight end. And then obviously your left tackle from day one has to come in here and be a linchpin.
I talked a little bit about that Jersey confrontation that they had, and I rewatched the presser on YouTube, and I was waiting to see how long it would take for somebody to ask about that jersey, because I know Colts fans have been asking that from the very beginning, like, what jersey is he going to have? I mean, what's it going to do? I mean, any personal thoughts on him choosing two? I mean, I'm sure it's not significant for everyone, but he had some fun with announcing that he had number 2, though.
Yeah, he did. I'm not a huge, number jersey guy. I fully understand why fans have some interest in it. But yeah, he pretty much said today of, he wore 20 in high school, and then, he wore 11 in Philly, and kind of always felt like 2 was a number that he liked. North Dakota State, I believe 2 was already taken by the time he got there. So that's why he settled on 11. And then wore 11 with Philly, of course. So, that was completely overblown, the whole Michael Pittman, whatever you want to call it. Could not have been more overblown at all. And, good to see those guys getting in some early work.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me see if I got some questions here. Let me see here. Don't worry, guys. We'll talk about free agency here soon, kind of talking more about the pressers to start. Let me see here. You guys and Juju Smith-Schuster, you all come in here every time and keep asking me about him. I tell you all the time, I don't want him. I mean, oh my gosh. Where was it? I saw it here. With Mac coming back, how much time will Jordan Wilkins get? I mean, Kevin, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, if everybody's healthy, Jordan Wilkins isn't going to play.
Right.
I know that might sound harsh, but it's just the reality of where you're at as a running back group. But it's the deepest running back, room I think in the league.
Yeah.
I thought it was very wise to bring back Marlon Mack for both parties, to be honest with you. So I look at it as Jonathan Taylor deserves to be your bell cow. And by that, I mean, I think he's 20 carry a game type of guy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you can still have Hines in that kind of carved out role, certainly. And then, Mac, I don't know, a handful of carries, something like that.
Yeah.
But Jonathan Taylor showed last season that he deserves to be the lead back. And I unless you get injuries, I don't think Jordan Wilkins is seeing the field much.
Devin Church with a $5 super chat. Thank you. No Juju, please. Yeah, I got you, Devin. Hey, my friend Nick's in here as well with a $5 super chat. Thank you. He's a Dallas Cowboys fan, so we'll just ignore him. It's okay. He's just like the rest of them, so it's okay. But yeah. So when Mac got brought back, I mean, I thought that was especially for the deal that they got him. I thought that was really smart. To have. Mm-hmm. To have your entire running back group right now be worth less than $10 million altogether for the three of them. I'd argue that this might be the best running back group in the league when you look at proven talent and what they're able to do as a whole. I mean, I think Reich said that he has the right idea that Jonathan Taylor needs to be the number one guy because he's shown it last year. And how they split the carries with Mac and Hines, I'm not 100% sure how they'll do that. But, that's up to Coach Reich. That's not up to me. So thankfully he gets to make that decision. But, I mean, how do you feel personally amongst this group right here? Do you think it's like one of the best in the league right now?
Yeah, I do. And, I don't know. Like, you could probably make the argument that Cleveland a little bit more proven, at the top of that running back depth chart. But I think what you like about the Colts is the fact that they've got some variety in skill sets. Hines, of course, being a huge, huge part of that as well. But Jonathan Taylor, I think, showed this year that, when he does make some plays in the open field, via screen or things like that. I know he had a couple drops in the playoff loss, but again, he is a guy that can certainly make things happen. So, yeah, I think it's vital to keep that group together because, like I was saying earlier, Derek, I mean, if you probably aren't going to have an upgrade at left tackle, like I think we all can acknowledge that. So if your O-line has to take a slight step back, you need to rely on that running back group to be able to, be a little bit more dynamic, maybe create a little bit more on their own, things like that. And we know that, Philly's had some decent rushing teams, not great like individuals necessarily. But I think that'll be big just to alleviate a little bit of what's on Carson's plate.
Absolutely. Cody's in the chat here as well. Hey, Kevin, appreciate you for coming on, man. Been taking a hiatus from Twitter and the podcast for a little bit. Hope you and your family are well.
Hey, what's up, Cody? How you doing, man?
Marco Martinez with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Marco. Who fills the linebacker hole if Walker leaves? Yeah, that was the big news today that he was possibly had a meeting with the Browns. I talked to my friend who's a Browns fan, and I told him, how great of a player he is, especially in the run game. He said that's exactly what the Browns need. And the Browns, honestly, are just filling every defensive hole they have. So it makes sense that he would probably go there. I mean, yeah, who does fill that role? I mean, we've seen that this last season, Okariki's taking a lot of the snaps away from Walker. But, there are still some times when the Colts will run a 4-3. So who does take the rest of those snaps?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I don't have a definite answer for you. I mean, obviously, like you were mentioning, Derek, late in the year, Bobby Okereke seriously outsnapped Anthony Walker. So the writing was kind of on the wall here. But when you do go to the three linebacker, personnel groupings, and you play a team like Tennessee and Derrick Henry and that bunch, obviously it is something that you want to make sure that you do have a third linebacker you feel comfortable with. Part of me thinks on a rundown standpoint, Zaire Franklin would be that guy, or maybe even Matthew Adams would be that guy as they play. I think they're in contract years, both of them. And then EJ Speed has always been a really intriguing name to me. Now he's a very similar skill set to Okereke and Leonard, so maybe he's not kind of the rundown thumper that you would want in that sense. But I think he's okay. It's year 3 for him now. He made a couple nice plays on special teams last year. I think he's always a name to watch. He was a 5th round pick. It's not like he was some 7th rounder kind of throwaway. So there is that skill set there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Cody and I have been constantly saying that we think EJ Speed should fill that role because he's just like Okereke and Leonard, just long and fast. Yeah. Seth Harmeyer with the $5 super chat as well. Kyle Fuller. Yeah, we're going to talk about him a little bit. Apparently interested. Jeremiah Atachu need one more receiving threat. Not interested in re-signing Trey Burton. We'll get into that one a little bit, Chris or Seth, but thank you. Let's get into the Jim Irsay presser here a little bit. First question I want to ask is how enthusiastic did Jim sound with talking about Carson and his ability to help take this team to where they wanted to go, which ultimately is the Super Bowl?
It's funny, Derek. I almost texted my media colleagues before the call starts and said, how early will Jim Irsay utter the phrase, "I could not be more excited," because he uses that in literally every press conference that he has, especially during the offseason. But I will say, I felt like he was extra bullish on Carson Wentz today. I thought he gave great detail on just some of the conversations they had and the homework, and they had to dig, they had to ask questions about why is he available and what's the risk level and those sorts of things. But he talked about the golden era. He talked about Frank Reich and Chris Ballard in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it was a little bit more, crazy talk than we're used to from Jim Irsay. But yeah, I mean, he's huge on Carson Wentz. There's no mincing words there. And I think it's a lot of belief in Frank Reich for sure. And that's Chris Ballard as well. I think in a way you're kind of betting on Frank Reich here with this move. But yeah, that was probably something that stood out to me. He pretty much, kind of pointed towards the draft for left tackle. I think we kind of know that, but again, to hear it from the owner is a little bit different. He mentioned still bringing back T.Y. Hilton. When he talked about the needs, he never really mentioned edge rusher, which again, I would strongly disagree with that.
Right.
I feel like that is a massive need that should have been addressed on the early days of free agency. But he really talked about tackle and cornerback, and then another dynamic playmaker in the pass catching department. Those were kind of the needs that he threw out there.
Yeah, I mean, the left tackle position thing is really fluid right now. I mean, we saw what I was looking, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday morning, like at 5:30 in the morning, that Trent Williams deal came out. And, that was a name that a lot of people have constantly kept saying throughout Colts Nation. And when you look at what that contract was, I mean, holy cow, that thing is ginormous. I mean, it's hilarious that they gave that man a 6-year contract, but but I heard it's like structured into 2 deals. There's the 3-year contract for the first part of it, where he gets the majority of the money, to where if they want to restructure the deal, the second part of it, then they can restructure how they want to do it. So I get that, but like $23 million a year for a guy that's 33, he's going to be 39 by the end of that contract. That is mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't take like a deep look at it, so I don't know what the guarantees are, how they're split up. I mean, obviously he's one of the best left tackles in the league, arguably the best left tackle in the league. And, San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan, getting back to running the football and taking off support for whoever their quarterback, or taking off some of the pressure for their quarterback, is a must there. And, I think we all know full well once Quentin Nelson, they decide to give him that extension, I think he'll be knocking Trent Williams off that line.
Since you mentioned Quentin Nelson, I mean, how much you think he's gonna get now that we saw Trent Williams, see what he gets? I mean, how much
so Williams was what? Was it?
It was a 6-year, $138 million. I mean, Joe Thuney, who plays the same position, got a 5-year, $80 million deal. So, I mean, I would have to imagine it's got to be bigger than that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Nelson will get the biggest in NFL history for an offensive lineman. I mean, I know he plays guard, but I mean, he's a 3-time All-Pro, and listen to Jim Irsay talk about him. I mean, Jim Irsay just gushes about him like none other. But again, and Jim got a lot of these questions today. I feel like we're in this kind of misconception of like the Colts can't use their cap space because they have extensions. That's not true. I mean, Nelson, you don't need to extend him this year or even next year. You have the 5th-year rookie option on him. If you really want to get greedy, you could franchise tag him. Now, again, that's not something the Colts really have done
very often.
And Nelson is deserving of an extension. But, Braden Smith and Darius Leonard, those are the two extensions, quote unquote, that are deserving, should get done, those things. But still, even with those moves, the Colts would have and do have enough money to make a notable move or two. They're just choosing not to so far.
Yeah. I was going to say here we got Seth Harmeyer beers with Bowen. That's not what this is, but
we'll have one in April, Seth.
There we go. Oh man. Yeah. Those contracts are insane, man. I mean, you're right. Nelson's going to get something crazy, and Braden Smith and Darius Leonard most likely are going to take that out this off season, I would guess. You got any news on T.Y. Hilton, man? Because I'm stumped here. I keep hearing, it's like I only hear it from the national media. I'm not getting a good sense of like, is there mutual connections here? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that T.Y. Hilton comes back. The wide receiver market in a way has been a bit slow to get going. I mean, you still have Galladay and Smith-Schuster, two pretty big names that still have to get deals. And I think Hilton probably expected a bigger market for him. I never thought he'd get a massive market. I thought the wideout depth was there. And it just he wouldn't have this massive market for him. So I think the Colts are letting him know that, okay, here's your offer. Go see what's out there, but this is what it's going to be if you want to come back. So I'm not stunned. It's taken a few days, things like that. Again, at the end of the day, unless we got teams that want Smith-Schuster or want Galladay and they really just strike out, I think Hilton, will be back.
Well, I mean, you mentioned the edge class, and we kind of said how the top tier guys are pretty much all gone at this point. I mean, what would you do personally if you were the Colts at edge now? I mean, what do you think they should do?
Yeah, it's not a great group. I mean, I don't have the list in front of me. What is it? Melvin Ingram, Jadeveon Clowney, Ryan Kerrigan.
Two guys that I really don't want.
Yeah, again, it's just I think it was a big missed opportunity by the Colts, earlier this week not to do something there. I guess you could bring back Justin Houston. And then you get to the draft and, there are some edge rushers there, certainly. But, I think you got to be honest of, the Colts have struggled, to draft edge rushers. And then also you got to think about it like relying on an edge rusher to come in here and give you an instant day one impact. Boy, I mean, that's high expectations for anybody, let alone, potentially a second round pick if you draft a tackle, in the first round. So, I don't have great answers there. We'll see if somebody gets cut. Houston, of course, has produced for you. I thought he started to show a bit of his age this past season. I think he admitted that. If you look at the inconsistency he had, he again self-admitted really that he kind of struggled at times this past season. So, it's just a missed opportunity in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta run through this because I'm normally an optimist. Okay, I really like to be optimistic, and like you and I were talking about before we came on here, that I have a good feeling that Ballard's going to figure something out to do this. It's just that we've heard nothing. We've heard nothing, and now all of a sudden we've lost Danico Autry, and we heard that didn't go down as smoothly as we thought it would. And so now, and I can't confirm nor deny, but from what people keep telling me is that Justin Houston may not be back either. I don't know. But I mean,
it's hard for me to believe that Ballard would go into this season with no defensive end that has proven anything yet and expect this defense to continue to get better. I mean, Ballard is the one that preaches all the time defensive line depth and finding the right guys that fit into the system. And I'll be honest, at the 23rd pick, the 23rd pick, I don't know if I agree that there is a first round edge guy in this draft that speaks to me that says, oh yeah, we get that guy, our defensive line's elite. I just don't see one. I don't know if you do. I mean, you could have a different opinion on it, but I don't see anybody that screams to me, we get that guy and our defensive line problems fixed. I don't see it.
No, and again, I think it's really unrealistic to expect that in year one as well. I just think edge rusher helps you kind of cover up some problems elsewhere on the defense. Corner, if you don't address that in as big of a manner as well.
Yes, Cody, I know it's 21. I realized it as soon as I said it. All right. Chill.
There are some pass rushers that have some intriguing traits, but still, year in and year out, you see first round edge rushers get drafted. They don't necessarily come in here and set the world on fire. So this just kind of adds to what we've been talking about, Derek, about I look at roster building and I look at free agency as there is an avenue to, bolster your roster, provide, even better than kind of supplemental pieces on your roster. And something I talked about today on my podcast, when you look at Tampa Bay, you look at Buffalo, you look at Green Bay, even Kansas City, these teams that were in the, Final Four, their edge rushers, their pass rushers, a lot of them came via free agency or trades. So it's just putting all your eggs in the draft basket is difficult. And it's also difficult when you only have 2 picks in the first 3 rounds and you have that need at left tackle as well.
Yeah. And, I think another thing that has just made a lot of Colts Nation, including myself, just angry is not only the lack of getting anyone, but I mean, when you're looking at some of the deals that these guys are going for, right? I mean, we saw Hassan Reddick, who just came off a 12-sack season, was one of the best sack artists in of all the season last year. And he gets a 1-year contract with $8 million. And then, we look at some of the wide receivers. A couple guys aren't even getting paid more than $6-7 million. And, Curtis Samuel went for 10.5. And then, the top guys like Corey Davis went for 12.5. And, Kenny Galladay is not even signed yet. I mean, everyone keeps saying, oh, it's the Giants, it's the Bengals that are calling, whatever. But I'm seeing all these numbers and it's just really odd to me that there's not been one of these guys that has spilled, oh yeah, that would be a steal to get at $8-9 million. That would barely put a dent in our cap problem. And yeah, it just doesn't seem like the Colts are interested in any of them. I don't know what's going on with those, but it just irks me to see all these top tier guys get these low ball contracts and just know that the Colts didn't really go for it.
Yeah, I think that's another great point you make, Derek, is the fact that there aren't these just crazy eye-popping, A money for C player type contracts that you typically see in free agency, particularly at edge rusher. So, again, the fact that we haven't really seen that, or at least we haven't seen that across the board, that I think, adds to your frustration as well. So I thought coming into free agency, I get Chris Ballard's approach. I understand his philosophy. I know he's not going to be some crazy spender, but I also thought year 5 of this, you have the opportunity to take care of a significant need because, again, you only have those 2 premium draft picks. I think you're only drafting twice in the first 100-some picks, and you still need a left tackle as well. So I think that kind of adds to some of the reasoning why you felt like the opportunity was there, and they decided to sit that out.
Yeah, I mean, and hey, guys, we got 175 people in here and only 51 likes on the stream. Come on, guys. I need to see this get to 100. All right, come on. We need some help here. We got a special guest, Kevin Bowen, on here, and all I can get is 51 likes. Come on, guys, help me out here a little bit. All right. So let me ask. I mean, outside of Colts Nation here for a second, has there been any moves in free agency that has kind of shocked you in a way? Something you didn't expect or anything?
Well, obviously the volume of what New England has done.
Tell me about it.
And I was talking to somebody earlier. I mean, no team has drafted worse in the NFL over the last 5 years than the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, they have had horrific draft picks, and that's why they have this cap space. They don't need to re-sign anybody, and certainly they've made quite a few moves there. Belichick clearly pushing all the chips into the middle of the table for this last stretch of his career. So that stood out to me. I mean, obviously the Bud Dupree signing in Tennessee, that definitely caught my eye. If he's healthy and can be a disruptive edge, Tennessee has kind of lacked that, and we'll see how he plays down there. Of course, Nico Autry going there as well, but I would say the Bud Dupree signing, just being in your own division. Really, the AFC has been a lot more active, I feel like, than the NFC so far here in free agency. Now, it's not across the board, but I do feel like that's been the case, which has been something that's been interesting to see.
I mean, I said I was messing with the Patriots on Twitter the other day. I was saying, you can't mess up in the draft if all you do is just spend your entire money on free agency. I mean, you just do it that way. You can't mess up in the draft because you got your whole team through free agency. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. Just the sheer magnitude of picks that they're throwing all this money out to, especially the two tight ends. I mean, Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, they double dipped into the tight end group. I mean, Bill Belichick,
and they double dipped last year in the draft.
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
two tight ends in the third round. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I completely forgot about that. A lot of people.
Can you imagine? So. Yeah, it's been that stood out to me certainly. I'll be curious to see if for some reason the Bears do get Kenny Golladay. I mean, a Golladay Allen Robinson duo, boy. I mean, that can make Andy Dalton look pretty darn good, pretty quick. Now I think we're a long ways away from all of that happening, but I just think those are some things to that have kind of caught my eye. And we'll see how some of the stuff plays out now, Derek, because you and I talked about the Kyle Fuller stuff a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have some other cap casualty guys, and we know that Chris Ballard has really been active in that department. So as of recording right now, again, the edge rush is disappointment, but we'll see how the rest of free agency now plays out. And really, we are in the second wave of free agency. I know we're only a day into the new league year, but what? I mean, 150 some guys have been signed already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is easily the second wave.
Yeah, and there's still some decent names out there. I mean, you can still go and get some of these guys that can fill one or two of your needs, and then you can address it in the draft. It's just, man, it just really does suck that we continue to wait. I just hope that whatever the Ballard is planning, I just hope that whatever it is, it needs to be something big. It needs to. I mean, Kyle Fuller to the Colts would not be a bad idea. I'm just saying I would love to, address the corner in free agency, because I mean, I don't think we're going to get a chance at any of the top tier corners in the draft. I think that all four of them will probably be drafted inside the first 20 picks. That's just me, though. I don't know if Ballard thinks that that's different, but I mean, is there a corner in this draft class that you would say you really want the Colts to go for? A name for me was J.C. Horn. I doubt he leaves the top 15, but I mean, that's a guy I would love.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Horn. I loved watching him this year. I actually watched a good amount of South Carolina. I mean, to be honest with you, Derek, I don't love drafting a corner again in the draft early. Yeah. I mean, I get that you might be in that position, but and I do think I am somewhat intrigued by Isaiah Rodgers. I know he's a 6th round pick, and Marvell Tell coming back. I would like to see a little bit more of them. But corner wise, I just felt like that was more of a free agency thing, and that again comes back to the issues that I have just not making a move at edge rusher. I could not agree more with so much of what Chris Ballard does free agency wise. I think it's a great approach to have when you hit on some of the draft picks that he's hit on. It's awesome, but
Mhm.
you've missed at these two positions that you're talking about, you've got to supplement that, and you've got to make sure that you still have a defense that can play at a high level. Because when you played the better quarterbacks in the league last year, we saw what happened. This is, it looked like a middle of the pack defense. So I think to make sure you're a January type of defense, that's where you get a little bit more of that edge pop, and that's where I felt like free agency offered that.
Yeah, I mean, when he got Danico Autry and Justin Houston, I mean, he held back for a couple days on those, and those picks ended up being pretty good. I mean, Danico Autry did really well for those 3 seasons he was here, and Justin Houston, ironically, even in his older age, he had more sacks that year than everyone except Zadarius Smith, who was taken out of free agency in that edge class that year. So, it's something that he's definitely gotten. So I just don't know if he's just waiting. Maybe he could be just waiting for something else. But let me just see here, a couple more minutes here, and then we can go ahead and let's see here. Cody wants us to talk about Neal and Fuller. Well, we kind of talked about Fuller already, but yeah, I heard a lot of talk about Neal from the Falcons. Sounds like, even if he doesn't play in the safety position per se, heard a lot of talks about him potentially moving down, playing that, the Sam linebacker position, just kind of an outside guy, but could also play in the box. I mean, does that intrigue you?
It does. Safety's not a big need, but I love Keanu Neal. I think he plays the game, with reckless abandon, and you just love his physicality for not being a huge, huge safety. And, you got to think back to when Chris Ballard took the job here. He mentioned that Atlanta defense and how they were built. That was when Atlanta, I think, had just gone to the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Keanu Neal, was a young piece, but, I do think there's some respect there. I'd be fascinated if you made that move, though. Like, what does that do to Julian Blackmon and Kari Willis? Are you just playing 3 safeties a whole lot? It's not something the Colts really did at all last season. So, but I'm a big believer, and you got to give Matt Eberflus a little bit more personnel-wise. Just make sure that, he's got just more ammo, different stuff you can go to, things like that. So, yeah, I think that's key for sure.
All right. Well, listen, guys, I think we're probably going to start calling this stream an end here. I want to appreciate the near 200 people that showed up into the stream today. Really appreciate everyone. And obviously, we appreciate Kevin for taking the time to be here. Kevin, I just got one final thing for you. Of the 200 people that are in here listening right now, and they're trying to find some words of hope, some words of wisdom, per se. What can you tell this group? Like, what message can you send to people that are looking for some kind of hope from Ballard and this Colts team for the rest of free agency and the draft? What message do you have for all of these people to say everything's going to be okay?
Oh gosh, that's way too much pressure to put on me right now, Derek.
Oh man.
In all seriousness, like, I'm not in by any means total panic freak out mode. I can sit here and say that I felt like pass rusher should have been addressed more seriously, but I also can acknowledge this roster is still in really good shape. Financially, of course, you're in great shape. And as long as you can, hit on draft picks like you have in prior years, you're going to, moving forward, be in really, really good shape. I just think that my disagreement, again, just comes from the fact that you missed out on potential to get maybe some dudes. That's what I was kind of talking about earlier today on the podcast. And now you're just, kind of getting into the just some guys in free agency. So again, to me, it's not panic, but I do think it's a missed opportunity. I know I saw someone mention earlier, Al-Qadim Muhammad. He is a name that I thought would be back. He gives you some 3-down presence. I really like the way he plays. Maybe he's seeing what the market is out there for him. But he's a name that I definitely bring back Because as you were talking about earlier, Derek, I mean, who are your defensive ends? Like, if you're going to go play tomorrow, I mean, it's Tyquan Lewis, I guess, on early downs. I mean, Kamoko Ture, Ben Banogu. And look, this is March 18th. You know, we got plenty of time to go here, but it's a group that I feel like right now has got to get at least two more names, notable names. Is it a Justin Houston? Is it a Muhammad bringing him back? Do you do something in the draft as well? So it'll be fun to watch that play out over the next month and a half.
Yep, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun for sure. And I certainly can't wait for the draft rolls around. That's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun. Well, Kevin, thank you so much, man, for coming on. I know today was a really busy day for you, so I appreciate you being flexible and being able to come on. It was a lot of fun.
Same to you, Derek. Thanks for having me, man. Shout out to Cody as well and everybody that tuned into this. And have a great weekend. And I have a feeling we'll have some news here to get us all somewhat excited.
Certainly hope so. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Leave a like on the video. And as always, go Colts.